interview debrief, one of the most underrated things right next to interview prep. It's basically you check in with both parties, the candidate, the hiring manager, and get a sense for how the interview went and how they want to move forward. You want to do it as quickly as possible after the interview. So usually as the interview gets scheduled, you also, once that has been nailed down, you want to set up interview debrief session, put it on the calendar so that you can reach them, you can get the debrief and agree to doing it before the interview happens. Otherwise, that feedback will get lost.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Viv, my friend, welcome back. Another Tactical Tuesday.
Whoop whoop.
Oh yeah, and so as promised, we're just like, hey, January, back to basics. So we hit on interview prep last week, and so this week you're just like, all right, flip side, interview debrief. Let's go to the other end of it. So back to basics, interview debrief. What is it? Why is it important? How are you thinking about approaching it?
Yes. So interview debrief, one of the most underrated things right next to interview prep. Interview debrief, you want to start out, it's basically you check in with both parties, the candidate, the hiring manager, and get a sense for how the interview went and how they want to move forward. You want to do it as quickly as possible after the interview. So usually as the interview gets scheduled, you also, once that has been nailed down, you want to set up an interview debrief session, put it on the calendar so that you can reach them, you can get the debrief and agree to doing it before the interview happens. Otherwise, that feedback will get lost, and especially like once people sleep on it. So don't do it the next day. Has to be within a few hours of the interview actually having taken place so that you can get first impressions, kind of like the initial thing as they're digesting, processing, and that will give you their unfiltered thoughts, which is what you really want. Once they've had like a day, they slept on it, they digested it, they will forget some of the things. Some will kind of turn into like a gut feel. You won't get as many specifics because the brain just processes things that are not super important. So some of the details that will have mattered, that they will have recalled right afterwards, they'll forget about them the next day. So you want to do it that same day. Now, the $1 million question is, who do you start with? Candidate, hiring manager? Any takers? Say it out loud or think it in your head.
As a recruiter, I'm going with candidate.
Da-da-da. Correct answer. You get
A gold star. Please.
a gold
Mail it
star.
to me. I can't wait. I'll put it right behind me.
You know what? I'll probably just like send you one and I will expect to see it at our next recording.
Oh, absolutely. I'll just have it. I'll put it like right here. If we can get it, plastered on something, signed, we'll be golden.
Yep, I got you. But yes, you want to start with the candidate because the candidate is the one that is the thing that either moves forward or not. So you want to get the initial impressions of the candidate and how they think it went before you have a conversation with the hiring manager. And that way you can get ahead of things, because if the hiring manager has a question or something like that, if you already had a conversation with the candidate, you can speak and advocate on behalf of the candidate, or you can course correct something that they may have misunderstood. These things are entirely possible. So you want to start with the candidate, and with the candidate, you want to get their first impression, how they feel it went, and they will tell you honestly whether they think it went really well or it didn't go well. And then you also want to ask about what are some of the things that, like, what stood out to you during the interview, and just pause. Let them talk. So during these debrief calls, the big philosophy that is really helpful is ask the question, shut up, and let them talk.
That's just life advice right there.
Yeah, and just let them, and they may not initially come up with an answer. They might be processing and thinking about the answer to your question. Just give them a couple of seconds to think. Don't ask like a follow-up question to then try and figure out maybe this is a better question to ask. Ask the candidate a question because it's so fresh. They might need a second to process that, think about it, and give you a thoughtful answer, which is what you really want. And so as a general principle, ask your question, be quiet. If the candidate doesn't understand the question, they'll tell you, I'm not sure what you're referring to. What do you mean? Can you clarify? They will ask you. So you want to get to their first impression. You want to also find out what stood out to them. That will tell you whether that thing that stood out to them was a positive or a negative. And you also want to ask about, was there anything that you thought that didn't go quite as well? And if the answer is no, that is totally fine. But I do want to make sure that we get like a full, comprehensive, wholesome debrief. And also, what are their initial thoughts in terms of like next steps? Are they excited about it? Are there any questions that they have now that they have gotten out of the interview that maybe they wish they would have asked, or some follow-up questions about what to expect next and things like that? So you just kind of want to get a sense for initial impressions, the good, the bad, what stood out, any concerns that they might have, something that didn't go quite as well as they wish it did now that they had a second to process this, and any questions that they have. And then whether they ask about next steps or not, let them know, hey, I'm going to meet with the hiring managers and I should have some kind of answer within the next couple of days. Don't say by the end of the day, because sometimes you won't get that answer. It's better to extend the timeline and deliver early than to promise something where there will be a delay, because then that's a bad experience that they're having. And if they're not hearing from you by the time that you promised to get back to them, this is where people start assuming negatives, and you don't want that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's candidate. Now what about the hiring manager after that?
You do the same thing. You ask them, hey, how did the interview go? What were your first impressions? Give me a general sense for how you think that went. What stood out to you? And pay attention to whether that's a positive or negative or how they phrase it. Also ask about, what do you feel like didn't go quite as well, or something that was unexpected? And anything that they feel like they want to call out. Are they like super sure about the candidate? They definitely want to move forward. Are they unsure? What makes them unsure about this candidate? And also, are they ready to make a decision on how to proceed with this candidate now? Do they need a little bit of time? What data is missing? What information is missing? If there's anything that comes up where you're like, I know the answer to this and the candidate probably meant this, but we can confirm and double check and things like that. So the main reason why you want to do it in that order is, in the past, I've had debriefs with candidates that said they thought this went really great. And then the hiring managers were like, we thought this didn't go well at all. And so you want to go into it a little bit prepared, and you want to ask for the good and the bad and anything that was unexpected. So you want to ask the candidate to give you the full picture, so that, because hiring managers sometimes will have a different experience and a different take on how the interview went than the candidate. So from a candidate perspective, because they have a good conversation and the people that are interviewing them are friendly to them, that can be interpreted as a signal of it went well. Whereas from the hiring manager perspective, you're always going to be polite. You're going to ask questions. You're going to engage. You're going to say, oh, that's interesting. Thanks so much. Thanks for the thoughtful answer. That signals to the candidate that it went well. So you do want to ask the candidate, what do you feel like didn't go quite as well? So that when you have that conversation with the hiring manager, you at least know the candidate's side of things, and you can even preempt, hey, before we jump into this, I do want to let you know the candidate mentioned they wish they handled this particular thing better. And after they had a chance to kind of like process the interview, this is how they wish they would have tackled this particular thing. And that might change things for them as well. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah. One, I'll call it tip of the hand, I've noticed in both myself when interviewing and just helping other teams conducting it, being a candidate myself, is I've seen if the hiring manager at the end of the call gets to already talking about, like, I'm excited for you to meet XYZ person for the next stage, or they start talking about like what that is, that's something I've used to kind of find the middle ground of, if the candidate says, you know, it went really well, I'll kind of lead into like, did they talk about anything in there? Like, what's next? Because usually if they did like you, they'll talk about that. If they don't, like you said, they're going to be polite. They're going to be like, yep, we'll be in touch about next steps. Like, you know, you can kind of softly get around that for some of that. But yeah, it's
yes
it's
and
an interesting
no.
one.
I do know of cases where the next steps aren't fully solidified. So hiring managers might not always be able to get
Sure.
that. So if there are any candidates that are listening to this, don't take the lack of clarity on next steps at the end of the interview like, hey, I'm really excited for you to meet XYZ, blah, blah, blah. The absence of that doesn't mean that
it's not a
it
one-to-one
went
every
well.
time. Yeah.
Just wanted to call that out because sometimes the next steps aren't clear. And so I don't want that to be like a headline.
Yeah.
Little
No,
disclaimer.
Little in first. Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. As I said, it's a tip of a hand. It's not always a guarantee. Like, if this happens, then that happens. No, as we know in life, very few things are.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else just on candidate debrief that interview debrief that we're missing or worth calling out?
Honestly, and this is something that is just, it happens all the time, is ask the question, be quiet, wait for 30 seconds. If you don't hear anything, then yes, follow up and clarify the question. But don't try to ask too many things all at once to elicit an answer. Sometimes you just need to give people a second to think about things, especially interviews that are they're usually nerve-wracking. People are nervous. It takes them a second to process it. From a hiring manager perspective, you'll get answers a little bit more quickly. But from a candidate perspective, let them process, let them think for a few seconds, and then say something. If they zoned out or if they didn't understand the question, they'll ask you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Love it. Well, part 2. No, back to basics. January. This was good. So I'm looking forward to next week with you.
Awesome.
All
I'll
right.
see you then.
Bye, y'all.